الضيوف الكرام يشاركون المذيع العالمي رزق خان تقديم هذه الفقرة. السادة الحضور، يفخر مؤتمر دبي الأول للمعرفة أن يكون بين صفوف متحدثيه شخصيات مؤثرة في ميدان المعرفة وقيمتها في حياة الناس. ندعو الآن السير برنرز-لي مخترع شبكة الإنترنت فليتفضل مشكورا.
Your Highness Sheikh محمد bin Rashid al-Muktoum, Your Highnesses, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm Riz Khan. I'll be doing the introduction in English. I'm very honored to be back in Dubai, and as Ms. Dua and I introduce our next speaker, I can't help but think of what's happened in the last 25 years, or what can happen in 25 years of change. It's actually 100 years ago this year that World War I started. And what happened in 25 years? I'll tell you. They started World War II. And that's because they didn't have the benefit of a man by the name of Timothy John Berners-Lee. And that's because in 1989, he created something that I think, when you look at the impact on connectivity, connection, and the transfer of knowledge, I don't think we fully realized the impact of what he's achieved just yet. But we're very honored to have him with us. So please give a very warm welcome to Sir Tim Berners-Lee.
Your Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Your Highnesses, distinguished guests, people of Dubai and the UAE, thank you for holding this conference to discuss this important subject. Thank you for inviting me. This year is 25 years since I invented the web. Now, many young people have grown up with the web and with the internet, and they don't know the difference between them. 25 years ago, I was very lucky that I was working in a lab where the internet was already available. So the internet is the basic communication technology. It had been invented 20 years before that. So in 1969, Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn and others invented this way of connecting computers together so that they could communicate. So then, 25 years ago, there was the ability to write programs that could communicate, but there was no web of knowledge. There was no world of information that you could click around. And I found it frustrating, and I realized that it could be better, and I've spent the last 25 years at first inventing it, then promoting it, and more recently defending it, trying to keep it open, trying to make sure that it becomes available as fast as possible to as many people as possible. The property of the internet, which was really important to me, was its openness. When I sat there at a computer in the lab at CERN in Switzerland, I could write a program to communicate on the internet and plug my computer into the wall and have it communicate with another computer across the other side of the world and invent the World Wide Web without asking anybody's permission. The internet was a permissionless space, if you like, decentralized technically and decentralized socially. And those of us who've developed the web since have tried to make sure that the web platform also is decentralized socially as well as technically. When you develop something new on the web, then you don't have to come and ask me for permission to make a new web server. There's no central bottleneck. That has been really, really important. So it's been quite 25 years. Culture has been a really important part of it. To a certain extent, people say the internet has its own culture. It has one of openness, of freedom, of free expression, of open communication, of open dialogue. Also, the internet is a way of nurturing and promoting and keeping the cultures, our individual cultures. Well, I remember even when I first moved to MIT, Michael Datouzas, the Greek guy who brought me over, the leader of the lab, he explained that even at that time in 1994, there were more people speaking Greek outside Greece than there were inside Greece. So in fact, already the internet was very important to them to keep the Greek culture alive. So yes, as you celebrate the Arab knowledge, Arab culture in Arab countries, of course, you're also, when you do it online, then you do it in a way that other people can participate, and a huge number of Arabic-speaking people in other countries can benefit as well. That is something very valuable. So culture, in a way, becomes something which the essential things of the culture that you think of as one you grew up with, the dances and the songs that you learned, those are things which in fact are shared by people across the world, and you can use the internet to promote those. So just as we also use it to bring about some sort of a new global culture. So it's 25 years now, and we at the World Wide Web Foundation, which we started about 6 years ago, has been decided to use this 25th anniversary to try to remind everybody that we should not take this communications infrastructure, the web, and everything that it comes with it for granted. The Web Foundation exists that the web should serve humanity as well as it can. And that, to a certain extent, it means getting the majority of people in the world who do not yet have access to the web. Still the majority of the people. When the Web Foundation started, there were only maybe 20% of people and using the web. Now it's nearer 40%, but still, the majority of people are not connected. So that obviously is a huge responsibility from all of us who are connected. We are so empowered, we have so much power, the gap between the haves and the have-nots becomes greater every time we make the web technology more powerful. So that has been important. So we have that responsibility to bring the web to those who don't have it, but also we have the responsibility to keep the web itself something which is open and free. We have been recently talking about drawing up some of the rules. People have been talking, in fact, about this as a question of human rights. Just you think of human rights as something fundamental and not something to do with technology and gadgets, right? But in fact, if you look at the difference between the capacity of somebody who does have a smartphone, does have access to the web, and somebody who does not, if they want to start a company, if somebody in their family gets sick and they want to find out what it could be, somebody who's connected to the web has so much more power to start that company, to diagnose that illness, that in fact, when you look at human rights now, we're starting to say that actually the internet access and the freedom of that access to the internet should start to be considered, to be counted among human rights. It's great to see the report, the third Arab Knowledge Report. Some of the things it discusses overlap with the web index produced by the Web Foundation, looking at different countries, looking at how people really use the web, who is enabled. I think that obviously focus on localization on youth is great and is timely. Youth obviously is a cliche that youth is where the future is. Across the world, I think it's important to look at the empowerment of youth, also, of course, the empowerment of women, when we look at how people are using the web technology to advance their culture. So we have a responsibility to keep the web open. We have a responsibility to get it to other people. There are challenges, of course, in all this, and the languages which we speak, while they are some of the things which we treasure and revel in a lot, or the complexities and the wonderful new things that are happening to each of the languages which we have across the world. Well, we love our languages and we enjoy them so much when we use them to communicate. Also, then they produce these barriers. Those of us, the technological people who work developing the web technology have, since the beginning, worked hard on internationalization to try to make sure that the web technology is not an English technology, it's not a Western technology, it's not necessarily a left to right technology or even a right to left technology. It can be an up and down technology as well. We worked hard to make sure that there's no fun, to try to not build a cultural bias into the technology or a language bias into the technology. The internationalization has been important. Localization of software also, of course, is really important. And an important part of the web index is looking at to what extent are people really able to use the web in their own language. So from the technological point of view, there are challenges in building a software which doesn't have built-in that bias towards a particular language of the person who wrote the software. It's a real art. And the World Wide Web Consortium, W3.org, has a lot of work and now has a group of people who try to understand that work. And I'd encourage you to get involved with that if you're interested in that, to get involved in the internationalization work, because it is never finished. It's on a par with the work we do with also trying to make sure that the web is accessible as possible to people with disabilities. That's the Web Accessibility Initiative. So it's a very exciting time. When you look back over the 25 years, yes, it's been amazing, the sorts of things that have been done using the internet platform, using the web platform. The great thing, we call it a platform because it's a solid foundation. We call it a platform because it's open to whatever you can do with it. The reason it's been so exciting is that we just designed the platform, just as Vint Cerf designed the internet, without an attitude, without expectations of it being used for particular applications. Similarly, the web is designed without an attitude as to what you should use it for, without putting constraints on what you should use it for. And as a result, the huge innovation of the next generation coming along using the web has produced an incredible explosion of the things you see out there on the web of all kinds. So that is very exciting. We have to pause in our excitement sometimes to make sure that we realize all the international connections or the work that's been done to keep the web open and that it relies on. And this 25th anniversary is something we've chosen to do that with. In fact, when one of the talks I gave about openness, I gave some slides of various rules that people had decided at various times in the past. In England, where I was born, the Magna Carta in 1215 was a set of rules which established the rights of the kings and the nobles, and I put up a slide of the Magna Carta, and I put up a slide of the Americans, the Bill of Rights, and I put up a slide of South Africa's Bill of Rights, and the people picked up that as saying, yes, we need a Magna Carta for the web. So let's just make a Magna Carta for the web as a basis, so for all this openness, as a basis for this knowledge. Let us use the knowledge which we can now share to enhance our individual cultures. And let us also, which is perhaps more difficult, let us also make sure that we use this technology which is designed without national board, without a concept of nations. The internet does not have a concept of nations. Let us use this technology also to break down the borders as well. Let us celebrate and grow our cultures, but at the same time, let us use it to break down the barriers. Let us use it to spend some of our time celebrating our own cultures, but also a really important part of our time understanding the people from other cultures, understanding how they think, understanding where they're coming from, because that is also really important for peace in the world. Thank you.
ومن بين الشخصيات التي تركت بصمتها في مجتمع المعرفة المعاصر ندعو الآن السيد جيمي ويلز مؤسس شبكة ويكيبيديا فليتفضل مشكورا.
Well, actually, in 2001, in January 2001, something really remarkable happened. I'm talking about the fact that I was invited to Dubai for the opening of the Dubai Media City, my first trip here, and I was instantly in love with the people and this place. And it's become a home for me as a result. Meanwhile, at almost exactly the same time, across in America, some guy was like talking about this project doing online encyclopedias or something. Now, of course, I had a lot of fun in Dubai, but I didn't get named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people. So I guess I should keep my mouth shut and invite the founder of Wikipedia, Jimmy Wales. Great to see you again.
Okay, great. Magic. Very good, thank you. Okay, good morning. Thank you very much, Your Highness, for having me here, Your Excellencies. It's a really wonderful time and a wonderful event. It's one of the most important things we can do is to celebrate and promote access to knowledge. And I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about Wikipedia's role in access to knowledge. And in particular, I'm going to talk a little bit about the developing world, because there are things happening there that I think many people haven't yet noticed, and I think it's worthy of our attention. So imagine a world in which every single person on the planet is given free access to the sum of all human knowledge. That's what we're doing at Wikipedia. That is our vision statement. And if you look at that, every element of that is important to us. When we say every single person on the planet, this means that our work is inherently global. It's inherently multilingual. We need to be in as many languages as we possibly can. By free access, we mean something very special. We mean not only that it's free and that it doesn't cost you anything to go on Wikipedia, but that everything we do is freely licensed, so you can copy, modify, redistribute modified versions, and you can do all of those things commercially or non-commercially. So when people are contributing to Wikipedia, they're not just contributing to this one website, but to a storehouse of knowledge that can be reused and repurposed for all kinds of things. And finally, the sum of all human knowledge means that Wikipedia is a website which is an encyclopedia. It's not a wide-open free speech platform. It's not a blog. It's not a textbook. It's an encyclopedia, a very particular type of reference work. In the 13 years now since I started Wikipedia, our community has written over 32 million articles across 287 languages. The 287 number is a little bit optimistic because we only have about 220 languages that have at least 1,000 entries. So those last 50 or so languages are very, very tiny and they aren't completely off the ground yet, but there's still a lot of work going on in the developing world and in those languages. We now have 550 million people using the website every month. This makes us the 5th most popular website in the world, and it means that Wikipedia is in many ways part of the infrastructure of the world. It's something that hundreds of millions of people rely on every day to find out some basic information that they want to know about the world. To give you some of the key stats on our distribution around the world, we have 10 languages now with over 1 million entries. We have 48 languages with at least 100,000. We have 128 with at least 10,000. And 234 have at least 1,000 entries. So as you can see, in a great number of languages around the world, we have a fairly substantial encyclopedia, but we still feel there's a lot of work left to do, particularly in the languages of the developing world, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Focusing on Arabic Wikipedia, it's one of the most interesting Wikipedias. It is a very large community. We have 341,000 articles, which is the largest encyclopedia in the history of the Arabic language. It's the 12th largest in terms of active editors, so it's a very vibrant community. But this next statistic is the one that I think is really interesting. It's the 5th best among the large languages in terms of collaborative depth, and it's worth explaining for a moment what that means. Sometimes you'll read or you'll see about a particular language, maybe Polish Wikipedia, which has well over 1 million entries. But one of the things that happens in a lot of the languages is that people have written bots which create entries in kind of a wholesale fashion. They'll get a database of, say, species from biology, and they'll create millions of short articles. Arabic Wikipedia has not done that. And so this number, 341,000, is actually a true number of entries that have been collaboratively written and very deeply edited by many, many people. So being the 5th best amongst the large languages is actually a real sign of the vibrancy and the depth and the diversity of that community, which means that it is very well placed to move forward very strongly going forward. So one of the things that comes to us when we realize that Wikipedia is now a part of the infrastructure of the world is that we have a huge responsibility at Wikipedia to do the right thing. So many people rely on our community. It's important to understand who the Wikipedians are. So why do we want to know who the Wikipedians are? Well, here's one reason. This is a quote from Twitter of a school librarian who said, "Yesterday I asked one of my students if she knew what an encyclopedia is, and she said, 'Is it something like Wikipedia?'" So if you think about a student today, a young student who's 17 years old, then ever since that person was 4 years old, Wikipedia has existed. And certainly in the last 5 years or so, when they would have been old enough to begin looking for information for their homework online, Wikipedia has been very large, has been ubiquitous. So for that generation of the students who are just now beginning to enter university, Wikipedia is a full part of the world that they grew up with. They don't know a world without Wikipedia, and that's really important, and it's really important for us to understand that we have a huge responsibility to that generation to make sure that Wikipedia is really good. So who are the Wikipedians? Well, by the numbers, our community is about 87% male. This is a number that we're not very happy with. We know that Wikipedia is very, very strong on certain topics. Typically, they're 87% male computer geeks, so if you want to know a technology topic, Wikipedia is very, very good. If you want to know about early childhood development, maybe not so good, because your 27-year-old single male computer geek doesn't really know anything about children and doesn't write about that topic. And so we do think it's very important to bring in a very diverse set of people to contribute to Wikipedia on the topics that they know and that they care about. The average age is around 26, and then this is the interesting one. If I can get a click. Click. Sorry, I'm not very good at computers. We have about double the percentage of PhDs in our community compared to the general public. So one of the key questions is how widespread can Wikipedia be? Click. I think the clicker's not working, so whoever's actually controlling it. So here's what you know. People talk about mobile in the developing world, and they say things like, "Oh, I've read about this, that farmers in Africa can text across town to find out a better price for their crops, and they can cut out the middleman and they can make more money." Or you hear sometimes cell phones are helping fight malaria because they're able to report to the health authorities that there's been an outbreak in a certain area, or there's a problem with mosquitoes. Well, these things are true enough, but I think they cloud your mind. If we can just click. Here's what you probably don't know. This is a phone that I used for over a year in London. It's a very small phone. It's an Android phone, Android 3G. It cost around $50 when I got it. Now there are newer phones on the market for as low as $31. One of these phones that cost $31, the specifications of the phone are very, very similar to the first iPhone. So we're seeing very, very low-cost smartphones becoming available, and they are selling hundreds of millions of these devices in the next 5 to 10 years. Look at something else. Look at internet usage. In Nigeria, In 2000, only 0.1% of the country was online, but after several years of growth, it got up to 26.5%, and I believe that by the end of this year, it's going to be closer to 40% in Nigeria alone. Why is that happening? Well, a big part of the reason is that bandwidth has dramatically increased. In January of 2002, there was 72 megabits per second for the entire country of Nigeria, and by the end of 2011, 17,000 megabits, because they've dropped new fiber optic cables. So all across Africa, there's a huge surge in the bandwidth that's available to people. And in fact, when I was in Lagos, Nigeria, I got a faster speed on my broadband speed test than a friend of mine who was sitting in Manhattan. This may tell you about the sad state of the internet in Manhattan, more than it tells you about Nigeria. But it's important to note that people throughout Nigeria don't have really fast internet yet, but it is to the country. I was in a 5-star hotel with a really nice internet connection. The point is, broadband prices, wholesale broadband prices are collapsing. And so what are people doing when they get online for the first time? Are they looking for prices for crops? Are they reporting malaria outbreaks? Well, maybe, but really the top sites across Africa, Google, Facebook, Twitter, Wikipedia, local newspapers. So the poorest people in the world who are now beginning to get on the internet for the first time aren't doing foreign and alien things that we don't understand. They're doing all the same things that everyone does when they get online. They're communicating with friends, they're seeking knowledge, they're trying to learn about the world. And so it's really exciting to me that the ongoing march of technology is making usable internet available really quickly. In 20 years, we're going to have massive connectivity to the real internet for hundreds of millions of people, and they don't speak English or French. This is why the multilingual thing is so important, that all these people who are coming online don't necessarily speak a colonial language, but a local language, and we have to be there for them in their own language. So one of the things we're doing, and I'm going to close with a very emotional and exciting video, is a program called Wikipedia Zero, where we negotiate with the mobile carriers to offer Wikipedia with no data charges, so that people who are in the developing world can get access to knowledge very cheaply. Here's the video. This is a video of some young students in South Africa who wrote a petition to their cell phone providers asking to make Wikipedia available for free. And I think you'll see it's really touching to think about the lives that these children lead and what benefit the internet is bringing to them. If we could run the video, please. I was promised that the video had been tested. That's a really pretty flower. Anyway, maybe I should just tell you what the video says. I'm really, really sorry about this. I was promised that this was tested. The video is of some young children, teenagers in South Africa who are asking for Wikipedia for free. And they explain that their school library has no books, and that when they do their homework, Wikipedia is one of the best sites, and 90% of them have cell phones, but they cannot afford the data charges. And so they're asking the cell phone providers to offer free Wikipedia. And at the end of the video, it's a response from the phone company, MTN, who were the first to offer Wikipedia for free in South Africa, and then the children cheer. Yay! It's much better when you watch it, but anyway, I'm sorry about the video. Thank you.